Welcome back to Trading 360. I'm Diane King Hall. Time now for the big three stocks, three charts, three trades. Rick Ducat will take us through the charts, and here to take us through a look at the technicals and tail of the tape, we've got Jessica Inskip, Director of Investor Research, stockbrokers.com. All right, great to see both of you. Jessica, it's good to see you on screen. Love that I saw you in person recently. Jessica,
too,
really
Diane.
quickly, before we get a look at your first ticker that you're looking at, can I get your thoughts on today's market action, the rally that we're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many macro thoughts that I have right now, Diane. From just today's rally, I think it was highly technical. We went all the way down to the 200 weekly moving average, which is something that tends to be a bottom in a lot of major declines. That's where we bottomed out actually during the large COVID decline. So that's technical. Now we need to see if this rally has legs. Looking at breadth, I think it was about 75% up day. Perhaps we'd want to see a little bit more than that. And then, of course, tomorrow is tariffs being implemented. But today, there's also a scheduled hearing that we have within Congress and the Senate with actually trade. It was already scheduled, and it's so interesting that it's right now, and there's some interesting components that are coming out of that. So what has been said is they're interested in negotiation, but it's not necessarily on tariffs, it's on trade deficit. That obviously was applicable with the calculations that went in, but it's just very interesting to see how that's going to shake out. And I really think we've got another volatile day even tomorrow. Just so much going on.
Yeah, I think you make a great point, especially because we've been rallying today, but we started coming off the highs of those sessions when the trade rep first started speaking. And we're talking about the USTR, Jameson Greer, speaking before the Senate Finance Committee. It sounds like he is reiterating some of the commentary that we've heard from other officials in the White House, that there are countries that are at the bargaining table, but he also said these tariffs are set to take effect. So in other words, it's like, we're still trying to get clarity on what will happen, and we probably don't know until it does happen. All right, but Jessica, talk to us about your first ticker that's on your list. You've got TJX in focus, parent company of TJ Maxx, Marshalls, etc. Shares higher today. What's behind your views here?
Yeah, actually, I'm pulling back a COVID playbook, if you will. So tariffs are all equivalent to a supply chain disruption. So this is a supply chain disruption, much like at that time. And what we learned from that period is companies are very resilient and agile, and they'll front run these tariffs. We see that like Apple saying they're going to bring 2/3 of the inventory onto U.S. soil. So there's going to be an excess product, and that's Apple's just an example. So companies like TJX, they're obviously not going to be reselling iPhones, but they're going to benefit from that excess inventory that comes up, at least in the short term. So I do think this is going to be a supply chain inventory shift. TJX is absolutely going to turn this into a tailwind, and in the short term, it could help with their earnings and give us a bounce.
All right, let's head on over to the Duke of Data, Rick Ducat. Tell us about what the chart looks like from your point of view for TJX.
Well, mostly during the past couple quarters here, more of a range-bound type of price activity that we're seeing, where we formed a fairly consistent ceiling at the red line on our chart near about 127 or so, going across those highs. You can see that we did test to the upside a few sessions ago, making some new intraday highs of 128.33. However, we did not log a higher close just yet here. We can also see, like trend lines are subjective. You could maybe draw this trend line a couple different ways. I tried to go across the closing prices as best I could, going down, starting from that high point that we had around November there. So by one measure, still in a downward sloping trend line going across the highs, but we also have a much more steep short-term trend line starting with these recent lows. Look down at that light green line near about 112. You can see that's been a triple bottom type of price point here for this stock. We also seem to solidify a little bit near that purple 252-day exponential moving average before crossing above our other two moving averages that we follow, yellow 21-day, orange 63-day exponential moving averages. Now we're hanging on above that confluence, which comes in near about 120 with our eye on that triple top type high there that we have to the upside. So that would be the mark to beat in the short term here. To the downside, look for support near 118 or so. That's our green line and our volume profile point of control, and ultimately near 112, that triple bottom, Diane.
Okay, all right. TJX shares up right now, 2%. All right, Jessica, want to give a final thought on TJX before we move on to your next ticker?
Yeah, important component, short-term play. There are some longer-term headwinds that may come up. So this is just looking over to the next earnings and excess inventory, all which could change depending on what happens with tariffs.
All right. Well, we're certainly seeing some more bullish sentiment rise around TJX and others in the discount retail space. But let's move on to the next one on your list. You've got Ventas in focus. That's a REIT. What's the story here? This one caught me off guard. I hadn't been watching the price action, but I know you've got something to say on this, Jessica.
Yeah, absolutely. This goes into my larger macro view and actually themes that will play out in the longer run. So those being longevity, we have an aging population that needs to service that aging population. The second, of course, is power and energy that we've discussed quite a bit. And then the third, artificial intelligence. Again, a lot on the discussion. We haven't talked too much on the longevity because it's a longer trend that's at play. But because of those aging demographics, the demand for healthcare, the demand for senior living, that's going to be extremely important, and that could be a tailwind for the security. It is a real estate investment trust, so it has a strong real estate portfolio, but it's also diverse. There's about 1,400 high quality facilities, but it's not just in the US. It's inclusive of Canada. It's inclusive of the UK as well. And they're favorable supply and demand dynamics, if you will, in terms of population. And their portfolio isn't only just in living facilities, there's also research that's embedded in there as well. So there's diversification, but it also plays on this trend of longevity.
That makes sense. I mean, and look, it's been outperforming the S&P 500 a year to date, up double digits. Quite a different picture for that compared to the broader market. Rick, what does the chart tell you when you look at Ventas?
Yes, quite a nice move off those lows from almost a year ago. We're up about 57% from that point, near the mark of about 41.45 there. We can see though that we've been enjoyed a fairly consistent uptrend. Our white trend line going across the lows has held firm despite the recent broader weakness in markets there. We also held on at an important confluence with that trend line. You can see we have our green dashed line there near the 62 mark. That was where price bottomed out a few times during its range-bound activity, centered around that volume profile point of control, that shaded area corresponding with that thick red line near about 65. So we have held on at this kind of rather broad supportive area, 62 to 65 or so. And now we are struggling to retake our orange 63-day EMA that comes in near about 65.50 at this point. So a key point to watch heading into the close. If we were to move up higher, we've got another volume node. You can see that second shaded area above current prices, roughly lining up with our yellow 21-day exponential moving average. That area comes in near about 68. That could be a resistance point to consider. Then we've got our double top highs near 71. 71.36 was the intraday high point. That would be a notable area to watch as well. And then, support at the areas I mentioned, 62, and then ultimately down below 57.50, another double bottom type of scenario, Diane.
All right, shares of Ventas up about 1.5%, nearly 1.5% at the moment, gaining some ground, adding to the advance it's already seen year to date. And some people may know them by some of their community centers like Brookdale, Welltower, et cetera. All right, Jessica, let's talk about your final ticker on your trade list. You've got Oracle and Focus shares gaining some ground today, along with the broader market action. Tell us what your views are here.
Yeah, this one is definitely the one of my picks today with the largest tariff risk. It has about 5 to 10% of its revenue in the auto and manufacturing sectors, which means if tariffs hit any of their customers, there could be cuts on spending, and which Oracle could be a recipient of that. So that is a risk. On the other hand, they are in talks and a big component of TikTok. That was extended just another 75 days because of a deal. That deal was suspended, so-called, because of this tariff implementation and the drama that's with China. But I do think that offers some upside to Oracle that's not necessarily baked into the price just yet. So I think that that acquisition potential is really a good tailwind that could translate positively into earnings. There's a lot of e-commerce that happens with TikTok, and there's so much there that we would love to get visibility into. So the long-term story there's near-term risks, absolutely, with tariffs, but perhaps those could be overcome with the longer-term tailwinds that is the TikTok acquisition.
Yeah, look, I've been on TikTok shops before for my niece. Obviously, the young people love TikTok shops. Rick, tell us about although, Oracle is making a move higher today, certainly has been a different story year to date. Take us through what the technicals look like for Oracle, Rick.
Yeah, like many stocks, this has seen a significant decline off of those highs. It feels like it was so long ago at this point. In this case, it was 198.31 in mid-December there. So then from there, you could have drawn a more shallow downward sloping trend line and then a much steeper trend line going across those other highs there that you could see. So then we could consider as well that we have crossed below our moving averages. All three of them are trending downward now. We have broken below our volume profile point of control as well, that thick red line coming in just around 140 or so. And notice as well that right around that volume profile point of control, our red dashed line represents another key gap to the upside. We filled the gap, we broke down below it. So now 140, 143 around that area becomes a resistance point to keep an eye on. The old support has become new resistance. Now we can also see there is a little bit of trading activity at these lower levels near 124 and maybe 116, 117. Those would be the other volume nodes to the downside to watch. Ultimately, though, our 52-week lows come in near 112.78. Momentum, RSI, trending lower. We are out of that oversold area, at least here, so that's more of a bullish signal, I guess, but still quite depressed prices with a major resistance area to overcome just ahead 140 to 143 or so.
Okay, all right. Definitely maybe overcome that oversold, but you're right, we're starting to see a little bit of fade even in the gains that we're seeing in Oracle, but still holding on to a gain up a little more than 1.5% at the moment. Still broad market action, holding on to some gains, but not certainly off the highs of the session right now. Jessica Inskip, stockbrokers.com, and Rick Ducat, thank you both for being with us. Appreciate you.